What is up, jabronis? It is a Monday. We have got the Philadelphia Eagles going to the Green Bay Packers on Monday Night Football. So I've got 5 picks for you that you can 19x your payout on PrizePicks. If you follow along with all of these are the 5 picks that I have for you, starting off with A.J. Brown going under 4.5 receptions. Then correlating that with his quarterback, Jalen Hurts, to go under his passing yards of 199.5. And then on the other side of the ball, we have the running back, Josh Jacobs, to go over 65.5. And then his teammate, Romeo Doubs, to go over 7 receptions. And then another correlation between Romeo Doubs and Luke Musgrave, with Luke Musgrave going under 7.5 fantasy score, because obviously, if the ball is being thrown, we want that ball to be thrown to Romeo Doubs instead of Luke Musgrave. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this with the first play that we have listed off, which is A.J. Brown going under 4.5 receptions. Now, the reason that I really like this a lot, I know that this is considered a favorable matchup because of how poor Green Bay's defense is in terms of receptions allowed, ranking next to last at 31st in terms of total receptions allowed. Versus wide receivers, though, it is a little bit better. They allow a ton of receptions, particularly to the tight end position. But overall, I think I really like A.J. Brown going under 4.5 receptions into this, because if we really start to do a little bit of a deeper dive into how this game looks, where I really like this is the matchup between the Eagles offensive line versus the Packers D line. The Packers D line obviously applies a ton of pressure, whereas opposed to the Giants offensive line, they give up a lot of pressure, as you can see here in terms of sacks. They rank near the bottom, allowing nearly 3 sacks a game. Quarterbacks hit, allow a ton of quarterback hits, quarterback hurries, middle of the league. Regardless, Jalen Hurts is receiving a ton of pressure, and I think that that's going to affect him, which is why this is kind of affected a lot of the plays and the decisions that I made for this game. So as you can see here on Outlier, what we can do is we can use this game scripting feature here. And really, this is the biggest thing that I had here. I knew that one thing that I wanted to look at when I was coming into this game was, okay, how are a lot of these stats affected whenever a ton of pressure is applied? And as you can see here, A.J. Brown has cleared this even in his 2025 season. Let's take a look at that. So again, it's almost 50%, hitting 3 out of 7 on his unders and only once in his last 3, and then split, obviously, in his last 4 games. But anyways, let's look at just his last 10 and how he performs as that pressure starts to go up. So as you can see here, once we start to add more and more pressure, you can see those big games start to go away. So even if we go at the average of 22.5, you can see that number instantly jumps up to 50%. And even if you look at really his last 7 games, he's hit under in 5 out of his last 7. So I do expect that to be the similar matchup today. And what we're going to see from A.J. Brown is the Packers are going to apply a ton of pressure to Jalen Hurts, which is going to affect the target share that A.J. Brown's going to get. And as you can see as well, if we look at the total target share, this might be the first season that I can recall where A.J. Brown is not the leading target share recipient on this Eagles offense. It is actually Devonta Smith, and I actually like his matchup more, his and Dallas Goedert's over A.J. Brown. I feel much more confident with A.J. Brown going under his receiving line, his receptions line, than I do these 2 wide receivers and tight end going over on theirs. So anyways, that's that. And then also what I have here is the correlated play with Jalen Hurts going under his 199.5 pass yards. It's the same exact thought process. Again, we can see here with some of the filters that I've created, he's gone under in 3 out of his last 4, and those filters that I have created here, once again, was this pressure rate. So as you can see here on that pressure rate, just in general, in his last 10 games, and we also have this as well. So some of these filters here. So if we look at just his 2025 season with no filters on, you can see that it's kind of an even split, 4 out of his last 8 going over or under. But I do suspect that this game is going to be a pretty low scoring game as well, which is why I've moved this down. Currently, the line is set at 45.5. I'm going to go ahead and trust the books judgment on this, and let's just leave it to 45. So anytime that it's anywhere from 27 to 45 and max of 45 points, you can see that again, he's only hit this in 1 game, which is obviously good for us. Now the pass rate, I don't expect that to be 80%. I could see it being somewhere as high as 60%, maybe even we can even bump it up to 65% just for keepsake, right? Again, still going under here, but we continue to bump that up to that 22.5. All of these things are kind of feeding into what I really suspect this game to be. And the biggest thing, once again, is that if that game stays under and he's getting pressured a ton, then we're going to see a lot of these things kind of work in our favor for him. And we're not looking at the 2025 season. We're kind of looking at the last 10 here. And once again, let's kind of bump that to the 60% that we had listed, which is what that graph was that you saw here, right? So again, obviously he's going to stay under. He's not even really getting close. The one game that he did clear was this Dallas game. And going over, and again, that was a very poor defense. So not really what we're seeing on this Packers defense, where they rank 11th in total defense in terms of passing yards allowed, rushing yards allowed, as well as their top defense. So again, I do think that this is going to be a very slow, methodical game, and I don't love the overs for the Eagles in here. But on the other side of the ball, I do love the over for Josh Jacobs, going over 65.5 rushing yards. And as we can see here with filters that I have set, looking at what we were looking at, it's a lot of the same filters. He has gone over 100% of the time in 7 out of his last 7. Now, what were those filters? Once again, keeping it consistent here. The filters that I set, I think that this game is going to lean towards the under. So I'm curious if we go under 45. You can see that he's cleared this in every single time the Packers game and their opponents have gone under 45% of the time. And really, that's kind of the only thing. These are home games as well, looking at just how does he perform in the home games. If we were to toggle that off, how does he perform in general, just across the board? Well, the only time that didn't happen was versus this really good Cleveland defense this year, where they lost 10-13, just a very odd game. But versus running back, Philadelphia is kind of middle of the pack. You can see here that they rank 15th in terms of rushing yards allowed to him. Also, if you look across the board, we are getting a little bit of on the alt lines. Some of these books, DraftKings has this line at 67.5. MGM has this at 68.5. So again, the fact that we can grab this at 65.5 on PrizePicks is obviously what we want. Some of the books are starting to go ahead and bump this up. So definitely want to try to grab this at 65.5 while you can. If you wanted to tell this is down in the comments below, the description below. Also, what we have is a WAP community called Juice Junkies, where I will be dropping these plays as well, giving you the earliest access possible to these picks so that way you can catch them before the bumps. I've linked that down in the description below, and we are running a sale, 50% off lifetime for the users who sign up, the first 25 users. It is a new community that we are starting, so we definitely want to help people get kind of the founders discount for being able to get there early and kind of being with us from day one. So anyways, Josh Jacobs going over a 65.5 rush yards is what I'm leaning towards. Romeo Doubs, on the other hand, I do like him going over 7 receiving targets. Does give us a push potential, so especially if we take this as a power play, we might not get the 19x, but if this does give us a push, then it'll drop down just to the 10x, which is obviously fine with us. But if we look at some of the filters here, you can see that he has really, in recent games, right? So this is kind of where the season started, was versus this Detroit game. And here recently, you can see that his target share has gone up tremendously, and that's obviously fantastic for us. But let's use the same filters, going over under 45.5, and you can see in his last 2 games, again, where he's most recently been, has been absolutely dominant, even in low-scoring games there. Now, I do expect the run play percentage to be a little higher. So, again, if we look at kind of the 50%, going the 50% there, again, not ideal in recent history, right? And this year, Romeo Doubs is obviously a completely different Romeo Doubs. So pretty small sample size in the first 2 games of the season. Again, that Cleveland game was maybe the worst. The opponent rank is obviously number 1, not a favorable matchup for him at all. But versus this defense in Philadelphia, full game receiving targets allowed 20th, so kind of near the bottom of the pack there. So a neutral matchup that we're going to see from him. But it's obviously really good. Also, what I like in this matchup is the not top receiving target. I don't know if we're going to have it here. But his tight end, Tucker Kraft, is out for this game after receiving the ACL surgery, the ACL injury that he had last week. And then we also have some questionable injuries here with Matthew Golden, Savion Williams, and then also Jaden Reed, also on the injury reserve. Do expect Dontavian Wicks to be back this game. So anyways, though, a lot of things working in his favor, and I think it's especially with Tucker Kraft being out. Now, last thing here is Luke Musgrave going under his 7.5 fantasy score. I don't really expect Luke Musgrave to have the best of games. and it's really because of how tough this Philadelphia defense is versus the tight end. Luke Musgrave hasn't necessarily stepped up. And that's why Tucker Kraft has kind of taken over, although Luke Musgrave was drafted before Tucker Kraft in the NFL draft when they were both selected in the same draft. But anyways, touchdowns allowed, they rank number 1. If you go look at the total touchdowns allowed to all tight ends against the Philadelphia Eagles, there's only been 1 touchdown allowed this entire season. So I don't necessarily, that's going to be the one stat line that would mess up a fantasy score line, so I don't expect him to get into the end zone. But even if we look at how Philadelphia ranks versus just receptions allowed to tight ends, you can see that they're still top 10, and even receiving yards allowed, they are still top 5, so coming in at number 4. So I don't think that Luke Musgrave, although he will be stepping up in the absence of Tucker Kraft, I don't expect this to be a favorable matchup by any means for him today. So anyways, that's all that I got for y'all. Let me know if you're tailing down in the comments below. Would love to know that. Y'all can also join that WAP community as well. We do have a free section as well as some paid exclusive Discord community that y'all can join. Anyways, we would love to connect with y'all. Just let us know. Best of luck betting this Monday. Go Pack Go.